Warriors Unite! Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. Hope you guys are doing well this Sunday evening. Hope you guys are continuing on your purpose, on your conquest of yourselves first, and then conquest everything else around you in God's Word. Thank you guys. I appreciate all the great comments, feedback. It's wonderful to kind of hear from you guys, whether you agree or disagree. I think it's great to have an open forum here talking about this subject. Today, we're going to talk about one that's really serious type of thing. As I'm doing more and more research on this, of the history of retention and continence, as they used to call it all the time, we're talking about a real serious subject when it really comes down to it. And, you know, women's attraction aside, all that kind of stuff, this is something that is important for me to kind of get out, and we're going to talk about this in a second. We're going to call this one Death by Masturbation, Semen Retention focus here. So, but let me get some shout outs before we do that. Let's pull our list back out real fast here. And I gotta get into it. All right, GLR YB2GD, thank you, my friend. Redline Eliminator, is it worth going with the girl? I think we talked about this in a previous one, but Redline, a lot of it depends kind of on what you're looking for. Is it part of your goals? Is it something that you really kind of focus on? Or is it something just a pleasurable experience? And we'll talk about that a little bit later here. Capital T, thank you, my friend. La Himini, Qussama. I think it's how long for women's attraction. Usually it happens pretty quickly. It just depends a lot on how long you've been in this state. And myself was 47 years. It just took a long time for it to come back. Even now, but almost at 63 years old, women's attraction is happening all the time. But there's a good and bad side to that. So we need to talk about that as we go on. Alexander Sprout, thank you. Discernment. And the booster. Women have some of the same benefits. I think it was a question that a booster asked. We'll probably talk about that in the future one. Yexx, 92 days. Now, this is a while ago, so I appreciate that. Nana, the soul looking younger. Absolutely on semen retention. He mentioned, and exactly right. It's all semen retention. We'll talk about why that's the case in a few minutes. Chosen One, thank you. Oleg, thank you. Marvin, long, twice. Pheezo, Geogenis, and El Ducino, unemployed, Macho Men. I think we talked about that a little bit as well. I'm a little behind on some of these, but thank you guys. So again, thank you guys for all your comments, feedback. I appreciate all those a great deal. Let's kind of talk about the topic a little bit here. Doing some research. We talked about the Unite experiment a little bit the other day. We talked about trying to look at the effects of, you know, what masturbation, releasing energy all means, and lack of, SR means. So we're going to call this one Death by Masturbation. And the reason we do that is because you literally can eventually wear yourself out, lose all your energy, and that's when you start, in my opinion, start dying. You start dying, you start losing all that natural energy that your creator has given you. You eventually succumb to a lot of diseases. You get emaciated, a lot of negative effects to things you do. Let's take a step back and examine why this is the case. And if it makes sense. Now, once again, we're taught in our society a whole different thing. It's mainly because people want to make profit, or they want to control the population. They want to go ahead and tell people that go ahead and masturbate, go ahead and look at pictures, go ahead and sleep with anybody you want to. This is the more free world. You know, if nothing is really free. I mean, you got to pay a price for all of it. But they tell us it's a free world. There's no consequences for sleeping with people. There's no consequences for masturbation. There's no consequences for any of that kind of stuff. And all that stuff is up to you, and you should go ahead and do that. Well, we know from God's perspective, there is a lot. No matter what religion you're in, there's a lot of problems when it comes to, releasing energy, having, intercourse all the time, no matter who it is with. We know that's a problem, no matter what religion you're in. That's the tenets of all the religions that I've ever seen. You cannot just go ahead and exert your energy anytime you want to. There is negative consequences to that. So let's look at this why. So slowly, and I saw this one interesting article I talked about, and a lot of this research has been done since the 1850s, 1870s, and 1920s, 1930s. A lot of the research talks about the fact, and this is why we had these myths for many, many years that people were really scared of, worried about, that if they did this stuff, they would go blind, they would have, they would stunt their growth, all these type of things. And there's reasons why. Now, a lot of things that are myths, the truth is somewhere in between. So let's examine this a little bit. When you look at your perspective at energy, and you look at the way that we are built, we're built from God to go ahead and be people who fill his purposes. And as a male, your superhuman energy, and females have this as well, but superhuman energy is that semen that you have. Now, the semen has allowed you to be able to produce other human beings. But when you do that, you're releasing that semen. And even for procreation, you are losing something from yourself. So what is the mantra we should be having in our 1% club? It is keeping your energy for as long as you can. Now, that's easier said than done in the society we live in. With society, because of people want to make a profit, people that want to control the population, they control men and they want to have a weak army, they want to have weak men, then they're telling men to go ahead and release all the time and sleep with as many people as you want to sleep with. But that's a really bad thing. And whereas the reason why that's a bad thing is because you're losing your own energy. You're losing what God has given you, your Creator has given you. And as a result of that, all these other things will happen to you. Now let's take example. When you end up releasing energy, you end up affecting all the minerals in your body. And so you're losing minerals that come out of that release. So even when you're procreating, this is happening. Now, procreation, there's a reason for this. You want to have a child. But if you're releasing all the time on a continuous basis, you're going to have a lot of effects. First of all, from a physical standpoint, you're going to be weaker. As a result of that, you're more tuned to catch illnesses. There's lots of research that shows over the years what this can do to you. It can cause cancer. It can cause a lot of things in your system because you're releasing. And I know I had issues with that for 47 years. I was sick all the time. I had colds all the time. I had acne. I had ailments. I felt I was a miserable wreck when I was in my 30s. And it wasn't until I started getting this book with Kellner's Fountain of Youth that I started doing the exercises. But I was still sick at times. Now, I haven't been sick in a long, long time. And a lot of it is even accentuated by the fact that I started this monk mode about 4 years ago. And all through the times that we had dealing with the vaccines, all this other kind of stuff with COVID, I wasn't affected at all. And the whole idea is that you're looking at keeping your semen. You keep your energy source, and that energy source is going to make everything else heal, especially if you're transmuting it. You're transmuting it up to your system. And we'll talk about exercises like that we've had, past videos you can look at. That will help you become a stronger person, because now you're reinforcing everything else you have. If you look at a lot of examples of people who get older fast, and I'm talking about people who are in their 40s that look like they're in their 60s, a lot of it can be attributed, in my opinion, back to the fact that they had a hectic sex life and they released a lot. And you can see that draining. You can see people, they become emaciated, they look old. And as people who are getting older, in my opinion at least, they have this major issue. And you can probably track it back, even though they want to blame everything else that's going on around them. Blame it on their sexual behaviors. And a lot of this is caused because of the release of that energy. And because of the releasing of energy, they have become weaker. And so now they're not as tolerant when it comes to other issues like physical types of things. And they can get colds easier. They can go ahead and get, serious illnesses. The stress bothers them a lot more. They're more anxious. And all of a sudden now, from a physical standpoint, now they focus on slowly, hurting themselves. And at some level, they can't recover. And if they've been doing this continually, now, even in my 47 years, I did not do it as much as people do it now. We didn't have the media back then, way back then, and the internet, things like that. So it was sporadic, but I still could not control it enough to stop it whenever I wanted to. And fortunately now, God has given me the knowledge and the information to be able to hold on to this. And I have seen such a remarkable difference, and you guys have mentioned it too. If you go back to some of my earlier videos, I've lost 75 pounds. I feel great. I feel so much more physically fit than I did ever in my life, even back in my 20s and in late teens. But that's when late teens is when a lot of this started. And so you lose that energy, and it takes a toll effect. You're not as strong. You're not as, able to exercise. You don't feel motivated to exercise, and that affects you a lot. And so when we talk about death is sure to come. And I think a lot of people, and I can say this, I don't have a lot of scientific research, even though there's a lot out there that I've read, that you shorten your life. The more you actually have releases over a period of time, especially continual habitual releases, the shorter your lifespan is. I really believe that now. And I wish I would have known a lot of this stuff, and I was able to see a lot of this stuff earlier. I think I ignored it because of the way society is, telling us that go ahead and release, all this is great for you. It's actually better for your heart, better for these things. In fact, it's the opposite. If you're releasing all the time, it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of your system. And obviously your glands and all those things are affected. Once you're losing energy, that's going to affect the whole body. It just makes sense if you think about it logically. God has given you this ability. It's not just to play with. And that's what happens to a lot of people. They're playing with it for pleasure, different things like that. They're letting it go. They have no trouble with that. But the trouble is it's affecting them. Now, the other part of effects is the brain. And this is going to be a little bit longer video because I want to kind of talk about this more. So your brain is also affected. So obviously back in the old days, the fear when we were growing up was the fact that if you did this a lot, you would be going into the, you'd kind of slowly going insane. And once again, this happens to people. Once again, if you look at people who've had this, these problems, a lot of this occurs because of their sexual behaviors. Now, they don't want to admit that, but that's something in my mind that happens. Your mind gets clouded, and once again, as you're masturbating, if you're not actually having the sex, you're getting air into your brain. And obviously, it's going to cloud your judgment. You're going to lose parts of the ability to use your brain. It's going to become stagnant. And all you're going to think about is going ahead and, having sex. And this is all you think about as women. You're not going to focus on anything else. It's just like, I remember that scene from The Godfather. I still know that. When you sit there and look at this, you look at the idea that, in The Godfather, the son is having sex with this woman and on his side and things like that. And Godfather is saying, my son doesn't think straight. Basically, all he's doing is banging the girl all the time, right? And this is what he's losing it. He doesn't think with his. He gets angry, upset, anxious because all he's doing is loses energy. And this is something that it's one of the big things that the evil one, Satan, has played on us, is the fact that as you're releasing, you think this is a great thing. It's pleasurable. It's a great thing. Well, it's the worst thing can happen to you. And I've seen this now after almost 63 years of living. This is the worst thing that can happen to you. Only one circumstance you should be releasing energy, and that's the procreation. Even that case, that's going to end up hurting you from a physical standpoint, but it's well worth it because your God's purpose is to procreate. And so you're losing it, but we're not talking about major effects on someone if they lose it once in a while. We're talking about major effects on people as they continually doing it 4 or 5 times a week, a day, things like that. So from a physical standpoint, obviously, you're slowly dying. From a mental standpoint, you're dying as well, because you're losing that ability to think. Just think of those times when you get addicted to someone, or you're thinking about sex all the time, or back in a lot of you younger guys, this is an issue, because all you're doing is people going around thinking about having sex all the time. Now, what ability are they going to be able to focus on getting anything done? They're not going to do that. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, you're dead. You're also dead. You're dead because spiritually, you're not thinking about God. You're thinking about the next time you can have intercourse, or the next time you can release energy, and next time you're going to see a picture, and all of a sudden this excites you more. And again, as I talked about these before, what ends up happening is you're not satisfied with what happened the last time. Now you got to go on and on. And it becomes an addicted cycle. And I was in that cycle for a while. All of a sudden now you got to get more pictures, or more of this, or more women around you, or the type of thing you're looking for to get to the next level. And this is what happens with a lot of people. They're never satisfied. And what ends up happening is that they can't get the same adrenaline thrill that they had. And this is why, we run into a lot of problems. And again, from a physical standpoint, you're sucking everything out of yourself, and then eventually you're not going to have anything left. And the same thing with a spiritual standpoint. You're a dead man walking. And that's what happens. And why we talk about the fact that you can actually kill yourself this way, little by little. And people do it. I mean, as they get older, they become nothing. They become weak. You could tell all the years they've had of sexual issues, they can't hold in their energy. And that's why when we talk about Kendler's Fountain of Youth, his exercises are great, and I followed those. But the wisdom of his book, along with a lot of the research out there, is the wisdom, the fact that as you follow Rite 6, those make everything a lot better. Because now what you're doing is you're holding on to your semen. You look at all the history of people, Tesla, Chopin, Beethoven, there's generals out there. You look at all the people, the great people that did this, even up to the modern era, where you look at people like Muhammad Ali, a boxer, you look at Malcolm X, you look at these people, they had periods of time, large periods of time of continence or semen retention, because they had to focus on what they had to do to get things done. They had to focus on their goals. Michelangelo, a lot of these people. The history is filled with people, men who had a lot of continence. And even though we focus on women a lot, women have the period of the month which they lose a lot of their retention. And what ends up happening is and they're fertile because they're basically focusing on having children. And that's what God has made them for. This is why men have to be really diligent in holding on to their energy. Now, we talk about this, and I know we talked about this with women, and Redline asked me about this with girls, and I know a lot of you guys are interested in girls, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with it. Women are wonderful. I think women are wonderful human beings. But there's a time and a place and a reason for this. And then obviously there is a downside to have all these women attracted to you. And that downside is temptation. And so you have to be very careful why you're using this. You're using retention because you want to become a great human being, great man. A man who will accomplish a lot for society and God's purposes. You want to get closer to God, and I think you do that also by retention. You're following his purpose more. But the other part of this is you're going to have huge attraction. I get this all the time. I get people who just can't wait until I'm able to be free from people, right? To be able to do that. They can't wait for the divorce papers to go through. Or they think, right? But the idea is that the reason that's flattering, even though that's flattering to no end, because it didn't happen to me when I was younger, the real issue, guys, is the fact that the reason it's drawing people into you is because you're a man of self-control. You're a man of continence. And because of that, you're highly attractive. As there's very few people. This is why we call it the 1% club. There's very few people who can hold on, even if they have intercourse. And we talk about this with the United experiment. You're supposed to be able to have pleasure with the person you want to, but you're still not supposed to release energy. Now, I say that, and I understand that is the hard thing to do. But it used to be a lot easier. Our society has gotten to the point where we've kind of, brainwashed people to be able to go have just release anytime they want to. But a man is supposed to be holding on to this no matter if they're having sex or not. But the thing is, and women understand this, and actually, even if you release to a woman, you're giving them energy, but you've lost energy. There should be a continual back and forth with man and woman that you both not releasing, but just going ahead and becoming stronger and stronger because of the union between you two. That does not mean you're releasing all the time, in my mind at least. So even in relationships, the positive side obviously is that women are attracted to you. But the downside is, what are you going to do about that? A lot of us all, make us happy if we have a girl or a woman in our life. Is that what you really need? So as more as you're thinking about this, if you can live by yourself, you'll draw all the women you want. Because you don't need to have a woman in your life. And once again, don't get me wrong, women are wonderful, companionship, wonderful. Women are wonderful, beautiful human beings. But the key, guys, is the fact that you should be able to live by yourself and be happy. If you're able to do that, and you're able to do that within your retention plan and your ability to achieve goals and things like that, you'll have no trouble with companionship, whether you have somebody with you or not. And so because of that, you become a lot more attractive. Once again, the key is that even though you're attracting a lot of people to you, just like with job opportunities, I believe, once again, that person who is retaining will get a lot more job opportunities just because their magnetism, their charisma is so much higher because they're retaining. Now, you have to transmute it, and obviously you have to continue with this, and I think it's where people make the mistake. They think this is a solution, end-all, be-all type of thing. It's not. You got to work out. You got to exercise. You've got to, get into your religious texts, in my case, the Bible. You've got to go ahead and continue growing, having goals. You got to set those goals. You got to listen to God's purposes for you in your life. You got to still do all those things. You still got to get a diet. You still got to get the right kinds of food. But it's so much easier because you don't have the anxiety, the fear. You have the confidence. You can look at anybody straight in the eye. Because you have your full resources with you. And even at 63, or close to it now, I feel that I'm 30 years old. Now, of course, I wish I could have done this a lot earlier and went on a streak a lot earlier. And it wasn't to the point where I almost was saying, I can't do this anymore when I was 58, 59 years old. And I said, I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to go cold turkey. And it was the best thing ever happened to me. But it wasn't until I got to that point near the end of saying, well, I don't know how to do this. I'm following the 5 rights of Kellner all the time, but that wasn't good enough. And I didn't understand the concept of the whole thing until now I do, because of retention. It really goes back down to the retention. That's where it starts. Everything starts with retention. If you can control this behavior, this is the most powerful force in the world. God has made this the most powerful force in the world. If you can retain that, then you're in good shape. But, of course, the problem we have is that most people can't retain it. They can't handle it. They lose addiction to it. And it creates a lot of other addictions. And one of those things that end up happening is the person slowly dies and continues to live a life that's impure and continues to go ahead and lose their life away for what? A short-term pleasure. Not thinking about the long-term problems they're going to have. And so this is why we talk about the idea that you can slowly die through, your images, your releasing of your energy, those type of things. So the moral of this whole story, my friends, is do not release your energy under any circumstance. Unless, however, you want to have a child with somebody and you're going to procreate. And just realize that even if when you do that, It's going to hurt you. You're going to lose some energy. But when you're younger, you know, the purpose is still the best purpose. And doing it once in a while is not an issue. But the problem is it becomes an addiction, and then slowly but surely, the body cannot handle all that energy being lost over a number of years. All right, my friends, enough. I wanted to kind of get this one out there. This was an interesting topic. Again, I saw this in some of the research I was looking at, and I wanted to kind of share with you. We'll kind of go back to some of the other ones during the week. Hopefully catch up some more, but I wanted to kind of get this one out to you guys as well. So, all right, my friends. Well, always a great Sunday night. I hope you guys have the rest of the evening, a great night, and start having a good week next week. But I always leave with two things. First of all, every day is a great day to a great warrior. And I always say that in different ways all the time, but you know what I'm talking about. And secondly, my friends, I'm gonna scream, but we always know that this is a battle that's every day is on us. And no matter if you want to attract women, if you want to be strong, if you want to be a high value male, there's always going to be temptation to everything you do. Just remember that and become strong, and you start that by retention. And because of that, we always have to continue to fight this evil one. And because of that, we always have to go, battle